Rightio. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Affective Statements Professional Development by Ben Simmons, Behaviour Support Coach for the Department of Education. I want to start off today with an acknowledgement of country and to acknowledge that I present today on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people and that I respect their spiritual relationship to country. I've been lucky enough to work all over South Australia through the lands of many peoples, and I want to acknowledge their respect and relationship with the land that has allowed me to live, work, and play throughout this state. I want to acknowledge that the Kaurna people are the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural heritages and beliefs are still important to living Kaurna people today. I also want to pay my respects to the cultural authority of any Aboriginal people that are visiting or viewing from other areas of South Australia or Australia, and that sovereignty was never ceded. So today is a professional development on restorative practice. So it starts with a real understanding of what is restorative practice, what are the theoretical foundations that it's built on, and how do I apply these affective statements. So restorative practice is a framework for building community and responding to behaviour. It's about responding authentically to situations and events through a dialogue. It's a practice for developing shared understanding and tools for developing and expressing shared understanding between people. And finally, ultimately, restorative practices is about making things right, about restoring harm and repairing relationships. The continuum of restorative practice is about the different sides of restorative practices between preventative and responsive. So preventatively, restorative practices can be used in developing identity, classroom practices, community, and curriculum that will prevent incidences from happening, will develop skills and repertoires to help students deal with confronting or challenging situations. And then there's the responsive arm of restorative practices, which equips adults and facilitators with tools to be able to respond to incidences, repair harm, and resolve conflicts. Now, affective statements sit in this middle part between being both a little bit preventative and responsive. The way I use restorative statements is far more within the preventative realm than the responsive realm. However, we will talk about both sides today. I want to start today with some of the theoretical underpinnings about why restorative practice works and the foundation that it's built upon. Now, what you have in front of you right now is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or Maslow's triangle, which really lays out what are the precursors towards this being a learner ideal that we have for students. Being a learner sits within that self-actualization triangle. This is the ability to be creative, to do things, to incorporate new information into ourselves. All these things sit within the self-fulfillment or self-actualization stage. That point is built upon so many different needs for people. You've got your basic physiological needs: food, warmth, water; safety needs, knowing where you're going to sleep, that you are in a safe environment, that you don't have to constantly be looking out for threats; belongingness and relational needs and self-esteem needs need to be met before you can start thinking about how to apply your energy in ways that are not about getting primal needs met. Now, where restorative practices sits is in that self-esteem and belongingness section. Helps to develop tools and understanding that where we are is a safe and secure place. It helps build, maintain, and restore relationships. Because what we know is that, students and parents don't really care about their students' academic achievement if they don't know if they've got enough food tonight to not go to bed hungry, or if they even know where they're going to be sleeping at all. If we don't have these precursors met, If a student doesn't feel safe, they're not getting their physiological needs met, there's no point in even getting into the relationship stuff. If they don't have a strong relationship at school, if they don't feel valued, if they don't feel like they can accomplish and that their time investment is important and valued by others, then they're not going to commit to the self-actualization stage. And whilst restorative practices cannot help with those base primal physiological and safety needs, we can employ it to help repair and restore some of those relational needs, the needs for friendships, the need for feeling valued and to have yourself be seen. And of course, we do that because all of these things lead towards that self-actualization, towards that ideal of being a learner for our students. Now, not that I need to tell teachers this, however, relationships matter. In schools, in your personal life, everything, relationships are what society is built on. So, of course, what the research tells us, though, is that teachers who are good at developing relationships with students, good at maintaining and good at repairing relationship with students, have better engagement and academic outcomes. Their students attend more often and are away less frequently for reasons that are unavoidable. We have fewer disruptive behaviours, fewer behaviour incidences, fewer suspensions, exclusions and expulsions for students who have or report highly on teacher-student relationship scores. Those that have higher relational scores leave school less often, and teachers who report having good relationships with students have less anxiety, feel burnout less likely to go out on stress leave, and have a higher feeling of being effective in their role and wanting to be in their role. Which, when we have a attrition rate of students, of teachers of 75%, is critically important. Now, one of the foundations that restorative practice is based on is this model of the social discipline window. And that's, you have in any interaction with people where you're tasking or supporting, you can do it one of four ways. And a style, indicatively one of these things. I'm guilty of being all of these four things at sometimes in the same day, sometimes within the same task. Right? And it's about consciously wanting to be within, for us, this restorative area. But what you can be is you can be neglectful. This is not really having high expectations of students and not really supporting them to do the thing. This is our movie day sort of thing. End of the term, don't really need you guys to do anything, and I haven't really planned anything. Let's watch the Magic School Bus. We have all been guilty for that. Put my hand up for that. Right? You've got your punitive. Sometimes you just need the kid to do the thing. Right? I need you to follow the road rules right now while we're out on the excursion, right? You are going to do the thing. This is my expectation of you, and you are going to do it because I am going to make you. You can sit in punitive. It is not a bad thing to sit in punitive because sometimes you need the thing to happen. We cycle throughout all of these throughout our day. You can be permissive. This is the, look, I don't expect you to do a lot of things. I'm going to make sure you get there. All right, this is how wrapping our kids up in bubble wrap. Super defensive, not letting them experiencing the realities of the world. Sometimes it's completely appropriate. But where we want to spend the majority of our time is in this restorative area, this with area. This is where we're doing stuff with students, not to them and not for them, but alongside. This is your guide by the side stuff where, yeah, this is what the expectation is. I expect you to do this, mate, but I'm going to be with you along this journey and make sure you have all the tools you need and that you can ask all the questions that you have to ask if you don't understand. Taking action with students means that we're going to have very high expectations of their behavior, but Concurrently, we're going to be able to provide that response, that level of support that they need to be able to achieve those high expectations. And what we know this leads to is better understanding about how the world works, about how school works, about what to do in school. Students feel like there are clear expectations, clear guidelines, and clear steps towards getting the outcomes that they have been tasked with or they expect from themselves. Students report that in a restorative classroom, that the processes and expectations are fair, transparent, and they know what they're doing. Students in a restorative classroom have reported better relationships with each other and with their teacher, that their vocabulary and the way they communicate changed and improves, and they typically have broader sense, broader understanding of empathy, both in its application and its use. So, sorry, its application and its processes. And one thing that we will touch on later is around theory of mind and emotional regulation, and how being able to articulate and have models of articulations for our emotional affect helps build theory of mind. Now, I've just finished saying emotional affect a lot. I want to draw a difference between effect and affect. Effect is our impact on something. We have an effect on students, we have an effect on the world. When I talk about affect, what I'm talking about is emotions. So affect is a psychological term that essentially means there is an emotional component to this. Now, Tompkins has theorized that students or people in general work best when we are maximizing their positive affect whilst minimizing their negative affect, and at all times while they are free to express whatever affect they are experiencing. So what we need is tools to understand positive and negative affect, as well as tools that help others express affect. Affect is about your emotional impact on others. So I can see that my behavior has made your emotions change, or I've been able to tell you that your behavior has made my emotions change. That is your emotional affect. Next, we have the final sort of theoretical component that is really required to understand all the restorative practices stuff, and this is Nathanson's compass of shame. So you don't have to have done something wrong to experience shame. Shame is the result of an interruption of one of the positive affects that we saw previously. We experience shame when we have intuited or expected or been experiencing something positive, and that's been interrupted or subverted. So this is our expectation of being happy, and then all of a sudden being brought down. We can experience shame. And it's also the reason why victims will often show a shame response, even if they haven't done anything wrong. We've expected to be experiencing the positive affect, but instead we've experienced something negative. Now, when we do experience shame, you've only got 4 broad ways to express yourself. And that's either attack yourself, so stupid, I'm an idiot, what am I doing? Why did I say that? Why did I do that? I'm an idiot. It's attack self. Attack others? No, it's your fault. You're the reason. You did this. You. It's lashing out verbally, physically, it's blame, it's table turning, it's all that sort of stuff. It's making someone else the problem. Then you've got withdraw. This is our, running away, isolation, I don't want to deal with it. Don't look at me. And finally, avoidance, denial, lying, distraction, and then abuse of drug and alcohol. Your response will fall into one or more of those things when you experience shame. So experiencing shame in the classroom can have some disastrous effects. The reason we talk about effective language is because effective language is a way to talk to a student about the impact of their behavior without triggering a shame response when done effectively. So effective language seeks to express these feelings about the effect of somebody's behavior, both positive and negative, without triggering that response. It's not about assigning blame, but rather about finding a way to talk with a person about saying, yes, you did some harm. How are we going to repair that? What are we going to do about it? And why did that harm happen in the first place? So it focuses on unmet needs. You know, why? Why did you feel the need to say something like that? Oh, it's because I wasn't feeling safe in the environment at the time. So what does the research tell us about effective language? Well, effective language helps build community and helps set the foundation to exist in a community in which emotions are safe to share, even particularly intense ones or complex ones. Effective language, or the use of effective language, helps to model emotions and how to deal with them to others, both adults and students. It showed a marked increase in teacher well-being when used effectively, and has been able to show teachers and students that there is a way to talk about skills and talk about situations that avoids that defensiveness and shame that comes with accusation. It promotes equity, fairness, and durability. It helps students develop emotional and articulate vocabulary. And honestly, for teachers, it's a very professional way of saying, I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated, or I just can't right now. What effective language isn't, is it's not about shaming or guilt tripping people into doing what you want them to do. And it's not about emotional manipulation. We're not here to demean or make a student lesser by pointing out the impact of their behavior, but rather about pointing out their impact because they might not have understood that their behavior has impact. It's not about inappropriately sharing impact either. It's not about telling deeply inappropriate things that maybe, oh yeah, my boyfriend left me last night, so all of a sudden I can't deal with you right now. That would be oversharing and not okay. It's not about publicly embarrassing students or sharing information without boundaries. And one of the biggest things is effective language isn't always about sharing only negatives. Effective language needs to be used on both a positive and a negative platform to show that students have an emotional impact, both positively and negatively. So what are some examples of effective statements? So some of the things that you might do in the classroom is all about telling people what they need to do. Effective statements is just a quick tweak to that. It takes an extra second longer, a couple of seconds at most, to explain not that I need you to do something, but the why I need you to do something. So instead of saying, sit down or stop swinging on your chair, the big one for me, the swinging on the chair, it's, you know what, I get really concerned when I see you swinging on your chair, mate. Do you reckon you might be able to put foot to the floor for me right now? It's about making a student aware that their behavior has an impact. Look, when you've got your phone out like that, I don't actually feel like I'm being listened to. Do you reckon you put it away and then you grab it out when I'm finished speaking? Do you know what, Jimmy? It makes me so happy to see that you're helping out Patricia. It makes me feel like I've done my job today. Thank you. Oh my God, I'm so excited to see that you finally caught on to this one, Patrick, instead of saying, you got it. I'm not going to tell you that again. Changes into, I'm not feeling very listened to right now, and I feel like we might have to do something a little bit stronger, a little bit more intense. It's the explanation of your actions, the why something happens, that's important in effective statements. Effective statements don't need to be written down. They don't need to be legislative. They don't need to be extremely formal. What they need to do is express how the behavior has had an impact. Effective statements are humanizing. We all experience these emotions. What we're not great at is articulating that emotion. When you talk in effective statements, what you're doing is you're actually removing the you from people. You will find that as humans, we actually talk about the you a lot. You made me do this. You, your behavior, you. Instead, it's about being selfish with your language, about being selfish with your emotions and telling them, actually, I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling upset. I'm not feeling like I'm being very effective right now. It's about making people aware of the impact their behavior is having on you. Through doing this, it doesn't trigger that shame reflex. They have to sit with that in that moment and go, oh, I did that. Or yeah, I did that. Instead of them reverting immediately to that attack self, attack others, withdraw or avoid. And effective statements focuses on that unmet need. Did you notice that in each of those statements, I made a request for change? Come with me, mate. What are we going to do about it? Every one of those has a request for it, for change in there, in that statement that focuses on either myself getting my need met or helping the student get their need met. Now, one of the things I'm not going to go over today, which has an entirely different impact, is the effective questions. Now, those that have done restorative training previously will be very aware of these effective questions. Now, this is our responsive arm of the effective statements. These are the things that you ask when the stuff goes wrong. It seeks to resolve harm, to solve problems, to restore relationships. They're not focused on shaming or blaming, all these same things that our effective statements are looking at. We use our effective questions in the moment where harm has been done. These are response to behavior, response to incident. But these are not a wave one intervention in classroom. The effective statements that I'm talking about today are about laying the groundwork so that effective questions work more effectively when it is called to use them, when there has been an incident. So one of the things we can talk about before getting into the actual application of effective statements is around why they work. So one of the quickest ways to de-escalate a situation for people is about mirroring a feeling by making them aware that, yeah, I see that you're having that emotion. And do you know what? If I was in that situation, I'd probably feel the same way. Yeah, mate, you know what? I would be angry too. If a question that wasn't taught ended up on the exam, I'd be angry too. It de-escalates straight away because what it tells people is that it's okay to be having that feeling. It's not the feeling that we often get upset with. It's our reaction to the feeling that has the behavior attached to it that makes people not feel great, not the actual emotion itself. And the second thing is it's the fastest way to build empathy with anyone or with any student is to tell a story. It's not that Jimmy is a bad kid. It's, did you know that his mum was diagnosed with cancer last week and that dad couldn't deal, so he left? Did you know that Sarah's family had been food insecure since she was 3 years old and they can't pay rent this week. Did you know that Sarah's dad just got arrested and is looking at jail time? Each of those stories helps us to be a little bit more compassionate around that student. Telling a story is the fastest way to build empathy with anybody. And why this is important is that each of our affective statements tells a little story. It validates an emotion. Now, I'm going to go through two ways of giving an affective statement today. I'm going to go over the more complex way to start with so you can see what a fully formed affective statement looks like. This is when you are a practice practitioner, you will do these statements without a second thought. But they are long and they're wordy and they can take some time. So I've also got a framework that you can use to start practicing with that's a little less complicated. So to make an effective statement, the very first thing you need to do is make an observation. Now, this observation needs to be indisputable. It's not about saying, Jimmy, I see you're angry, because we might be way off base. He might have just been running and is hot. It's about making an irrefutable statement of fact. My floor is a mess. There is marker on my whiteboard. I have lost a sock. It doesn't matter what the observation is. It needs to be related and it needs to be undeniable. From that, you then share a feeling. Observation. Everyone was really quite loud when Miss Kendrick came into the room, and I'm feeling kind of anxious about that because she's my boss. Or so lining up was really difficult today. My observation. I'm feeling really frustrated. Or oh, it's a hot day today. I'm really not focused. You brought your diary to school today and it's been filled in the entire week. Observation. I'm feeling so proud of you. Feeling. Following that, we share the impact. So what was actually the impact of that observation? All right, everyone's, I noticed that we're having some trouble lining up today. It's making me feel really frustrated because we spent so much time practicing that, and I'm concerned that someone's going to say that my students don't know how to line up anymore. Or, oh my God, Sarah, you brought home your diary every day of the week and you've brought it back to school. That's making me feel really proud because that tells me that you know how to do that now and that mum and dad are looking at your homework every night. When Miss Kendrick comes into the room, I start feeling really anxious because when she sees my room a mess like this, I feel like I'm not the most effective teacher. When you make an observation, share a feeling, and then do the impact, your next step is to request information. Can you tell me what's up with that? Why? Well, it's your genuine curiosity about why is that thing I've observed happening? Or why do you think that might be the reason I'm having this feeling? Or why do you think that might be the impact on my concern? It's about maintaining and staying curious about why students are doing the thing that's having an impact. And students will surprise you every day of the week. I've had some rippers. And through staying curious, I've been able to solve problems that I would have never thought were the problem in the first place. This is the hardest thing to do for adults because often we think that we already know why a student is doing something. But this is our students' chance to tell us their story and to help us build empathy. And it's also your chance to tell the students a story and to help them build empathy with you. And finally, there's a request for change. So I've noticed, guys, that there's a bunch of paper on my floor, and I'm actually kind of feeling anxious about that because what happens if another teacher comes in and sees my room a total mess? Could you let me know, why is there so much paper on my floor today? What's going on? This isn't normally an issue for us. Okay, well, what do you think we could do? Do you reckon you could help me out here? Could we spend a couple of minutes and just clean up the room and then go back to work? It's your request for change at the end. I like to frame them in the, can you help me out? Because then it's about them doing me a favor. It's building that reciprocity. Could you help me out? Could you just stack up those chairs for me so I know that the place is nice and tidy? Or can you help me out? How can I help you to make sure that everything is nice and tidy in my classroom? It's about a genuine request to change and a genuine understanding that there needs to be a solution to this issue because it's having an impact. Now, that is a very long-winded way of doing an effective statement. It gets very, very quick as you become more and more practiced with them. However, when we're starting out, I find the best way is to have a bit of a sentence frame for people. Now, this comes from the NVC people. This is an organization that is committed to essentially world peace. They're committed to the reduction of violence in everything. So one of the things you can do is you start with the I've noticed. So I've noticed, once again, the bunch of paper on my floor, and it's making me feel anxious because I need a clean classroom to be able to teach the best way possible. Guys, could you help me out? Would you consider maybe taking a 1-minute break and just picking up paper? What this does, this little framework helps, it removes that investigative side of effective language and just helps you state and build empathy with your students. It helps you articulate the feelings that are happening with yourself, and it helps you to model that emotional range and that students' behavior is having an emotional impact on you. And by modeling these things first, we can help them develop that empathy that you can then mobilize to do that investigation phase more effectively later. So I've noticed, and you can use this, well, beyond the classroom, you can use this in your professional development, speaking with other adults, speaking with leadership. Miss Kendrick, I've noticed that the bins are always really full after lunchtime, and it's actually making me feel kind of anxious because I value my classroom being really clean. Would you consider asking the handyman to come empty them, or would you consider allowing the year sixes to come and collect and empty the bins after lunch? All right, this helps us to explain the whys. Why do we need something to happen? And you'll find that people are far more likely to come along with you because what you've done is you've articulated an emotion, you've told a story, and then you've presented a particular solution. And if the solution that you present, would you consider, having the handyman come and empty the bins? Well, if that's a no, well, I still have this need or this value. What are we going to do about that? Well, can you help me out? I still value a clean classroom. What can we do about this? Tell me about that. Why is that difficult for you? So effective language can be used in all different different ways. With your students, you can use that framework or the larger framework if you want, and talk to your students about the impact of their challenging behaviors or their behaviors in general or their positive behaviors. With adults, it's about having a very professional way of saying, this isn't working. Talking to your parents about, what, you know, I've noticed that Jimmy's grades have gone from an A to a B. I'm concerned about that because I really value all of my students' learning. Do you reckon you'd be able to help me out and maybe sit with him for 5 minutes at the end of the day just to help him unpack his homework? You'll be surprised at how receptive adults are to this language, just as students are. Affective statements can be used on a school-wide level as well. Uh, Vaping at schools is often a big problem. Having the entire cohort of students there and explaining to them that, what, we've noticed a lot of vaping in the bathrooms. This is really concerning for me as an adult, because it makes me anxious about your health. What are we going to do about this? Tell me why. Would you consider instead vaping somewhere else, off grounds, right? But it's about presenting the same situation, the same framework for having that open, relevant discussion about, your behavior is actually having an impact on me. And I know that's not your intent, but that's what's happened now. What are we going to do about that? It's about presenting the relationship harm as something that can still be repaired and something that they have an active role in repairing. Now, one of the hardest things for adults in this process, and why I removed it from that beginning practice in that framework, is because remaining genuinely curious around someone else's impact or their motivations can be hard. I want you to consider how you might ask another student or ask a student about why they're doing the things that they're doing. The process is called drilling, about asking another student about why they're doing the things once you've made a request. So I've noticed that there's a bunch of paper on my floor. I'm feeling quite anxious because I need my classroom to be clean. Tell me, guys, why is that happening? What's going on? And they might go, nothing, Mr. Ben. Or they could go, oh, well, we're super busy and right? And so one of the things that you can do in these situations go, oh, so I'm hearing you. You're saying you're super busy. That sounds like it's really challenging. Can you tell me some more about that? One of the ways that we know that the effective statement stuff can fall down is when we start making assumptions around why a student is doing the behavior that we're finding challenging. So some of the stuff that you can say to a student is, all right, tell me about that. Or I don't quite understand. It's that rephrasing of, right, so you're telling me that you're super busy with the math work right now. And so when you were doing the erasing, you just brushed it off your desk. And so now it's all over the floor. Is that right? Ask for your clarification. So you're telling me that you were super busy. Tell me more about that. Why are you super busy today, but you weren't yesterday? It's about really drilling down as to why the behavior is happening. Because if we don't know why the behavior is happening, then when we come to make that request about what are they going to do to repair the harm, if we don't have the right underpinning problem or the right unmet need, then the way they repair isn't going to be sustainable or durable, and it's just going to happen again. The other hard thing that adults find is actually defining why this is challenging. It's about what value is being impacted for you. And why is the problem actually a problem? So this is your chance as a teacher and as an adult to say, how is this behavior having an impact on you? And unfortunately, as teachers, we're often taught and trained to be dissociated from emotions in the classroom. It's that, don't smile until Easter sort of stuff. The student's behavior should not have an effect on you. Well, I rally against that. I say that you should be showing that students have an effect, on you, but in a professional way. It's about letting them know that actually your behavior right now is like, I'm feeling that I'm not feeling very listened to, or I'm actually feeling kind of anxious and I'm going to step away now. Making them understand, making a student understand the impact their behavior has on you without pointing a finger and saying, you are doing this to me, is really, really impactful. Unfortunately, we're not very well versed in unpacking what my actual concern is. So why is this problem a concern for you? How is it affecting you or the young person? How is it affecting others? Or what is the impact on safety, learning, health, social norms? It's not about being in a power struggle, but rather it's about really encapsulating what your concern is for these students or for yourself, right? Just with the paper example, my concern is that another teacher's going to come in here and they're going to think I'm not doing my job. And that's a concern for me, guys. Unfortunately, it's your behavior that's making me feel that way. But we can't say that. So we frame it in I've noticed that there's loads of paper right now, everybody. And it's making me kind of anxious because what happens if another teacher comes in here? They're going to think I'm not doing my job. Why is that happening today? What do you think? Oh, you're super busy. I get that. How about why don't we take a quick break? We do some stretching, we have a bit of a brain break, we clean up, and then we go back to doing our math work. Is everyone cool with that? Through that, you get your needs met. You get to model to the students some empathy, some emotional affect, problem solving skills, a large range of skills and impacts that we need to be able to live in this world. One of the other things that teachers, adults, and even kids find difficult is expressing the range of emotional vocabulary that it takes to tell somebody that they're having an impact. I often get from teachers, I am not feeling respected right now. Well, respect isn't an emotion, it's a need. So, what can we put in there instead of respect? I am angry. I'm annoyed. I'm actually kind of confused. Or I'm feeling really irritated, mate. These emotional words um, fill a dual purpose here in that it helps you actually think about what are you actually feeling in this moment as the educator, and how can I convey that professionally to my students. But it also affords you the opportunity to expand the emotional range and vocabulary of your students, of saying, I'm actually feeling really discouraged right now, everybody. Why do you think that might be? It gives you an opportunity to open up and talk about encouragement, discouragement, and the difference between those things. It's about building skills and building vocabulary, emotional vocabulary as well as articulate vocabulary for your students. Now, one of the more challenging steps as well can be the invitation step. This is that step that is the request to repair harm. What are we going to do about it? This is about developing a durable solution that is both realistic and mutually satisfactory. So when you're working with young people, you are not telling them how they are going to solve their harm. It's about working as a team together and demonstrating that you are going to work as a team and you're both committed to repairing this harm. Now, a few tips on this one is when you make that request, so, well, what are we going to do about this? Or would you consider doing this? It's that first thing you can always offer, and it costs you nothing to offer to the students first. What are we going to do about it? It makes them feel like they have some agency in the process and that their voice is being heard. It also gives them a chance to do some problem solving by themselves. And in this step, it's okay to say, no, I'm not comfortable with that solution, or I I don't feel like that's an appropriate solution. Can we try again? It's about us trying again as a team. And also that sometimes one solution won't be the solution to everything. It might require multiple different things to happen, and that's okay as well. The invitation step, or the final step where you make that request to repair harm, can be the most complicated one for a lot of people and will take a lot of practice. And so the best way is simply to practice it, to remember that the final step is about asking our students, right, what are we going to do about that? And when they can't, or if they can't come up with something, okay, what are we going to do about that? Means that we are a team. The student has a chance to propose a solution. You have a chance to propose a solution, but ultimately, both of you need to come together to find a solution that is mutually satisfactory and durable for the both of you. Right. One of the things I often get asked is, what about, doing this stuff? This all sounds great, Ben, but what about, little kids or kids with sensory processing disorder, or some sort of language disorder or anything like that? Like, that's fine. There's no reason why you can't do any of this with more simplified language or less language. I acknowledge that this is a very language-rich intervention. I'm 100% every day of the week, but it can always be brought down for students. I've done this with 3-year-olds. It is very, very easy to bring down when you bring it down to those very base requirements of, all right, what happened? Right, mate, you jumped in the pool. And that makes me feel real upset because I thought you might trip. What do you reckon you could do next time? And if you want, you can add in the how did you think I was feeling, depending on the capacity, age, and whatnot of the student. But instead of doing all the really high functioning language stuff, you can bring it straight down to, this happened. This is how I was feeling. Well, what can we do to make it so that I'm not feeling like that? And if there is already a developed relationship there, you'll be surprised at how quickly people are motivated to do the thing. I often get teachers come to me and go, I'm going to try that on my kids tonight. One of the biggest ones, always the dishwasher. Oh, guys, when I get home from work, I get so frustrated when I see that the dishwasher is still packed with dishes, because I need that extra time to cook dinner. What are we going to do about that? Or when I get home and guys, I've noticed that your bedroom's still a mess. And you know what? When I get home and I'm tired and I get really frustrated with that because I value a clean home. Well, what are we going to do about this? These are all things, it's all about you and about your frustration, about your emotions, but someone else is motivated to change their behavior to make it so that you're not feeling that way. This is the essence of this intervention. Right. I often get asked about ASD and affective statements. Now, ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and the development of theory of mind or empathy is a contentious point, to say the least. What we think we know right now around the building of theory of mind and empathy involves the role of mirror neurons. And mirror neurons are those, essentially the monkey see, monkey do um, monkey see, monkey do neurons. It's that they will imitate first before understanding. So the more you do an action, the more likely a student is to imitate that action, and through imitation to actually understand why that action is happening. This is the reason why young kids will play house, even though no one ever formally introduced them to play house. But they know the rules and they know the expectations because they see mum or dad or mum and dad doing house every day. These mirror neurons are a big part of watching others succeed or fail and being able to put themselves in that same situation and seeing if they would also succeed or fail given that information. These mirror neurons allow them to experience without having to do. And so the more examples and the more exposure to doing the thing we can give them, the more exposure to empathy and to this practice that we can give, the more likely they are to pick up, practice, and run with these ideas and this way of thinking about others and thinking about the emotional impact of behavior on yourself. These mirror neurons also allow people to unpack these situations one thing at a time. So if you continue to do affective statements, what will happen is they'll unpack each bit little by little. They might unpack the observation first, and then they might go to the solution after that, but they'll unpack each thing based on where they are at the time and their current capacity with this empathy rich, language rich intervention. And overall, it helps develop this theory of understanding that other people have that rich life experience as well, not just themselves. Right, finally, I want to talk about how affective statements sits within the MTSS model. So the affective statements is definitely a tier 1 intervention in which the expectation is that you would do it for all students regardless of how challenging they were or their particular needs. This is an intervention where you talk about the emotional impact of all students' behaviour. However, it can proceed to be narrowed down to those more impactful and more responsive interventions as you move down that restorative practices continuum that we saw in that very first slide. So in tier 2, you might look at doing restorative circles or restorative chats or remediation. And in tier 3, you would look at those really formal restorative conferences and restorative interviews. What I want to leave everyone with is that this is a practice-based intervention. Everyone sucks at it when they go the first time. I'm not going to lie, right? You trip over your words and you say the wrong thing sometimes, or you say the wrong emotion, or you pick up on something and the observation you make isn't an undeniable fact, and a kid will challenge you. All these things make up the process of learning. And I still make those mistakes constantly because I'm still learning the process and I'm still refining my process as I go. But the only way to get better at these statements is to give it a shot. Print out the frame on the slides, and pop it up on your wall to remind you. I've got teachers that have printed it out in big A3 things stuck on their back wall, so it reminds them, and they walk over it and they look at it before they make any statements. And then the kids all groan because they see the teacher walking towards the poster and they know what's coming. And that's fine. It's that constant practice. When you feel like you've got that framework down, try one of the more complex ones where you make an invitation to help solve the problem. Practice, practice, practice is the only way to get better at these. And I just want you to make a commitment to yourself. If anything here has resonated with you today, print out the framework and, try one or two a day. I started with a lot of my teachers, just, take 20 minutes out of your day. Just, in this 20 minutes, I'm going to use as many effective statements as I can. And that's all they did. And that's where they started. And now they use them just as well as I do, frankly. Right? It's woven through everything they talk about now. As always, with all these professional developments, I appreciate any feedback that you can offer. If you just scan the QR code on the screen now, it should take you to a Microsoft Forms, which you can fill in all of your details and submit, and I would be very appreciative of any feedback. Thank you so much for your time today. You are more than welcome to contact me at ben.simmons@sa.gov.au if you have any further questions or require additional support or coaching. Thank you so much.